A reading from the Gospel of John. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph, from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly, I tell you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." So Philip, having encountered the Christ and deciding to follow him, went to Nathanael and told him that Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth, was in fact the man of whom Moses and the prophets wrote. Nathanael's reply to Philip's news was this: "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" You see, members of Jesus' family were immigrants of a sort, from a town in Galilee that was the last sort of place where the people of Israel expected the Messiah to originate. Nazareth was looked down upon, even by people of Galilee. Nazareth was, at best, insignificant and probably a dirty, poverty-stricken little village. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Nathanael's question compels us to ask a question of our own. Can anything good come out of Asia or Africa or Latin America? They are certainly poor parts of the world, but aren't they exactly the kind of places from which we might expect the Son of Man to immigrate? What does it say of our country when would-be leaders disparage, in the most foul and racist language, people of a color and class from which Jesus emerged and throughout his ministry lifted up? I like the casual way today's gospel reading starts out. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. The decision to go to Galilee isn't presented as a grand epiphany. There's no angelic summons. Instead, you get the impression that Jesus might have been simply eating his scrambled eggs, drinking his second cup of coffee, and suddenly he says to himself, "I think I'll go to Galilee today." Maybe in much the same way that many of you one Sunday morning, a few years ago, a few months ago, or maybe even for the first time today, decided to come to Holy Trinity, or the Church of the Redeemer. And once Jesus arrived in Galilee, people he met there saw something in him, something within him of the Christ. Maybe that's possible for us as well, that this morning, those around us will see within us something of the Christ. I'm rather drawn to the honest skepticism of Nathanael. Christians, if they can be honest with themselves, are pretty skeptical about what passes for Christianity among the true believers. I think the belief is rather overrated. Philip didn't try to convince his friend Nathanael that he had to believe anything. He simply suggested that he come and see. And when Nathanael came to see, he found that Jesus knew more about him than he could have imagined. And Nathanael regarded Jesus' insight, his knowledge that Nathanael sat under the fig tree before Philip called him, as something of a miracle. The initial miracle, I suggest to you, was that Jesus was beginning to open Nathanael's eyes to the miracles that were to come. And there in Galilee, Jesus began to collect his disciples. Simon Peter and his brother Andrew, their friend Philip and Nathanael, who witnessed the small miracle and believed. And it was after this fateful encounter, John tells us, that Jesus and this new collection of disciples went to the wedding at Cana, where he turned the water into wine, went to Jerusalem and cleansed the temple, met with Nicodemus by night, and began his ministry, preaching and teaching and healing throughout Judea. John's gospel tells us that Nathanael is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. No guile, it says in the King James Version, a good, honest, decent human being. He wasn't the wretched sinner that Bible-thumping preachers like to talk about, Jesus coming to save. He was a decent person, like most of you. And Jesus made him a disciple. Jesus gave him a purpose, a mission, a reason for being. For people like us seeking purpose, that's a miracle. What I want to offer you today is the same assurance that Jesus offered Nathanael. You will see greater things than these. You, by your presence here, have responded to a call to mission. You're all missioners. Some of you were among the first to be called, like Peter and Andrew and Philip and Nathanael. And others of you, like Matthew and Mark and Luke, were called a little later. But all of us are missioners, and we have been called, as followers of Jesus, to bear witness to the miraculous. Missioners are not typically called to service in the most ideal of conditions. None of you were drawn to Holy Trinity or Redeemer because of the architectural splendor of our space. None of you are here because of the magnificence of our 100-voice choir, or because you hear Bach played on an organ with 20,000 pipes and 7 manuals, or because our acolytes move their paces with flawless precision and military bearing. Jesus never told his disciples that following him would be easy. I can only imagine that the early disciples put up with more than a few discomforts and conveniences. They walked dusty roads, faced ridicule and persecution, depended on the kindness of strangers for their sustenance, all for an opportunity to experience daily an encounter with the divine. Jesus' call of Philip and Nathanael was a call to mission. But more than that, it was a call to recognize the presence of God. This story stands at the crossroads of discipleship and Christology. In our walk with Jesus, we learn who he is and who we are as well. We learn what we are made of. Are we seeking comfort or are we seeking challenge? Do we seek to surround ourselves with those things that serve us, or are we called to servanthood ourselves? What Jesus promised Nathanael is that he would walk with him, and that he would see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. I can't end this sermon without first calling your attention to the Old Testament passage, where we read of the boy Samuel lying in his room, listening in the night. God calls Samuel, Samuel, and the boy 3 times mistakes the voice for his mentor Eli. Eventually, Eli instructs Samuel to go lie down and tells him that if he hears the voice again, to answer, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." May we too listen for God's voice amidst the miracles and the mundane, the triumphant and the troublesome. May we awaken to the divine presence in all that we encounter. Amen.